We're sitting beside the first folio of Shakespeare, Brady.
Really?
Now, I know you're an extraordinary student here, but have you read the plays of Shakespeare?
I have read some plays of Shakespeare, but not in college. I was a theater minor, or not theater minor. I did theater when I was in middle school. So
In middle school? Now, you're not really
but
trying to
I read them in
substitute
high school.
what you learned in middle school for.
No, I wouldn't say that I learned maybe some of the higher, the deeper themes of Shakespeare when I was in middle school and high school.
Well, do you know any of the Shakespearean plays?
Yeah, the ones was Midsummer's Night's Dream, Shakespeare, and Macbeth. I know that one decent enough. And those are them off the top of my head. Those are the ones that.
One of the problems with college, particularly since you're a science major, is that there's so much to learn and not enough time to do it. What I try to advise people to do is to get some kind of a structure, a skeleton, framework, that you can just fill it in, basically for the rest of your life if you live long enough. You know what I mean? So you need to know how a Shakespearean play really works. Just one. And then you can fill out with the rest of them. There's 36 of them. You don't have to do all of them, but
If you get one down, then you're good.
well, you understand something of the depth of the language. You understand something about the structure. Structure's all the same. It's got 5 acts. Certain things happen in first, second, and third, fourth, and fifth. And not all of them are great plays. They're all great language, but they're not all great plays.
Literature is kind of your passion and your specialty, correct?
Well, it's what I got my PhD in, but I guess literature, art history, philosophy, and history are the things I am most interested in and feel somewhat knowledgeable about. I'm interested in biology because I had almost a minor in college in biology just because I was interested in it.
Right.
And I'm interested in politics.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
sort of the way people are, but I don't consider myself an expert particularly.
Right. But were you planning on being a professor when you were getting your PhD?
No, I just wanted to know what to read. I wanted a good reading list for the next 70 years.
Yeah, I'm sure you got a pretty good one out of that.
Got a good list.
Well, then how did you transition to, or how does one become a college president?
Oh, I think one thing just led to another, pretty much. When I graduated from graduate school, the Vietnam War began to really kick into high gear. And I'd had a motorcycle accident when I was young and had 7 broken bones in my neck. Actually, it was an automobile. I had a motorcycle accident first, then I had an automobile accident. And they wouldn't take me right away. I was drafted the day I graduated from college, for example. But I was put on, they didn't say, we'll never take you. They said, when we really get hard up, we'll give you a call. So I went to graduate school in the meantime, and I broke 7 bones in my neck and back, which is why when I turn with a hole in my shoulder. I don't have much mobility. And I really wanted to be an educated person. And by the time I finished graduate school, which was pretty quickly, there weren't a whole lot of teaching jobs out there. There were just lots and lots of candidates because a lot of people went to graduate school so they didn't have to be drafted. Because either they didn't want to be soldiers or they didn't believe in the war or some kind of combination. And so I immediately went into an administrative job just because I got the job. I applied and it looked like an interesting line of work and kept me close to the universities, and I kept doing that.
Yeah. And which universities did you jump from?
Well, the first one was, I was the first executive director of the Florida Endowment for the Humanities, which was in Tallahassee first, and then I moved it back to the University of Florida. And then I went to Tennessee as executive assistant to the chancellor for 14 years. And then I went to Cornell as executive director of university communications, both inside and outside the institution. But it was partly to get ready first billion-dollar campaign that the Ivy League had had. Then I went to Georgia as a vice president for 10 years. Then I came here.
And what brought you here, I guess? What brought you to Eckerd?
Well, I think maybe about three things. One is, my wife said, do we have to move every time we get a new president at a university? Because I'm pretty particular about who I work with and for, particularly for. And I said, no, I hope not. So if I became president, theoretically, I wouldn't have to do that again.
Exactly.
I had first thought I'd go have another vice president's job at Texas, which I almost took. Great president there, great university, underappreciated in a lot of ways. State's so big, so hard people to comprehend. It's bigger than France. I mean,
It's crazy.
And I had a number of other opportunities, but I had begun to think that American higher education was really had so many problems in different places. Intercollegiate athletics is a disaster, a moral disaster more than anything else, a financial success. But particularly, I was concerned about the fact that undergraduates got such short shrift. At all the schools I went were great places. And there are lots of great institutions in America, and I know something about a number of them, but places that have focus on graduate students and research often give undergraduates a really short shrift. They're not taught by full professors. There's no continuity to their program. They sort of get what's left over, even though the PR of it means you've got to say, this is what we really care about is our students, because they're 18 to 22, and that's what taxpayers and citizens think colleges are for. And less are they for that at the big research institutions. And I had three sons who were all going to liberal arts colleges. But the experience was much better. And I thought that was important.
Yeah, I've definitely loved it. I mean, I've always said the one flaw, or my one regret with Eckerd is I haven't been able to do everything. Like there's too many opportunities, and I've never taken a class that didn't count towards a major or a minor. I've never I decided not to travel abroad for a winter term or a semester just because of other choices. And if I had 4 more years here, I'd probably do completely different things.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's one of the great appeal of an academic life. You can do that. A lot of people don't, even though they are professors. I mean, in the University of Georgia, which has gotten to be a really good place, mostly because of state money, somewhat because of some enlightened leadership, but demographics and state money can do a lot. Your state's growing that fast. I had 66 English professors.
Wow.
Just for the English department.
Incomprehensible.
And those professors often didn't know what the other people in their department were doing, much less what the entomologist in the vet school was doing, studying the life of spiders, for example, or what somebody else was doing in Renaissance history or whatever. When you've got 2,200 tenure-track professors, it tends to create more insularity rather than the kind of breadth. So even though we only have 140, give or take, faculty, they know a whole lot more about each other and what each other is doing. Partly because they're following students along.
Right.
They're really focused on the students, but you can do it if you want to. I mean, you can have an intellectual life as an academic, but it's not automatic. You have to focus on it. And it's hard for people to do that because they're so focused on sticking up with their discipline, with their own field of inquiry, and then they get comfortable. The most interesting people I know are scientists who really know a lot about history and literature, or English professors who are really concerned about biology and philosophy. Those are the really thoughtful people.
So what advice would you give to our generation then, as we're as we're moving along, trying to get an education, trying to figure out who we are in the world? Would you have any one or two bits of advice?
You mean while you're in college, or after?
Just in general, after college, during college, in these transitional times.
Well, they're always transitional. All times are transitional. The reason I started with the suggestion about Shakespeare is because when you know the great writers, you know what endures, what's constant about not only the human condition and character, but about the human environment. So the politics that you find in Shakespeare's history plays are exactly what you see now. And when you don't see it, when there's something new, you know whether it's new or not, if it's not in Shakespeare's place. I wouldn't want any of the people I care about to grow up to be young men without understanding Hamlet, for example, which I consider one of the great works of art in any civilization. Because it's partly about how a young man confronts everything about his life, and particularly his family, and the family business, which is running Denmark in his case, and reacts to lots of tough things that happen to him in a thoughtful way. So for me, it's a touchstone. So knowing the great works is a key. I have frequent verbal battles with some of our faculty because of what they don't teach or what they do teach, and what we now call human experience. We used to call it Western heritage. Because I want those things to be touchstones. I don't want them to be about current political issues, not that I don't care about current political issues very deeply, but because I want our students to know what endures. So they'll be able to match the current stuff against sort of what the tradition is. And I don't know that, one of the things I've learned in this job is that giving advice to young people is not really a great thing to do, even if I feel pretty confident of it. And I don't always. I do about some things, but I don't always. I think living a thoughtful life is what every reasonable person wants to do. I think it's hard to do if you pay a lot of attention to all the media around us that is begging for our attention. My wife asked me the other day, she said, how come you didn't answer my telephone call? And I said, because my phone is always on mute. And she said, my cell phone, she said, why is it always on mute? I said, because I don't want to hear it. And I don't want to hear the buzzing when somebody sends me a text message, except when I'm ready. People get offended by that, but I think you have to fight back against all those opportunities for interruption to have a thoughtful life. It's a constant battle, of course. We don't have to live as slaves to others and others' opinions, but it's not easy to know that. I just read an article last night someone sent me about identity politics, and it's partly because the article says an awful lot of young people find their identity in associating themselves with one big, important issue, which they see to be the sort of pinnacle of moral righteousness. And everything else sort of takes a back seat, and when anybody deviates from what they think they ought to, other people ought to hit with respect to that issue, they vent. It's not really a great way to lead a thoughtful life, it seems to me. Life's too complicated to do that.
I definitely agree. When in our Ford Scholars senior seminar, we actually had this almost similar conversation with, what is our cause that we feel that like other generations maybe have had one cause or something, and we talked about how there's too many things for us to be passionate about that we can't just pick one. And there's I love the environment, and climate change is a big issue, but there's plenty of other things going on too, and there's a lot of different things to be attached to, and I'd find it challenging to commit myself to just one.
Yeah. Well, I think an educated person, I think that the biggest test is to try to understand something in its full complexity. That's hard to do when you just have a particular take on things. The great part about what I do for a living here is that it gives me a lot of very complicated tasks. If you take yourself seriously, that's a good thing.
Right.
Some of them I may not, in fact, be up to, but most of them I'm up to if I spend enough time at it. But it really means understanding that all these tasks have about 50 parts, and they may have a half a dozen or more constituencies. And so, and it might be that the thing you do today is not going to be the great thing to do 10 years from now. Sometimes you have to do it anyway, but you need to understand that you're making that trade-off. Those are complicated issues, and you don't get at that by reacting quickly to an identity politics issue.
When you first mentioned politics in this conversation, my mind immediately went to the politics of a diverse, strongly opinioned faculty. And I guess what have you learned working with people at this institution in particular?
Well, I've always believed, partly because I suppose the way I was, quote, brought up in graduate school, in real shared governance. And there's not much left anymore in American higher education because the places have gotten so big, so hard to do. And faculty, again, are so focused on their professional accomplishments that they often don't think of themselves as citizens of the university or whatever. But at the great liberal arts colleges, shared governance is alive and well, and it is here, I think.
Right, I agree.
And I've felt since I got here very strongly about it. I used to be the president and ran the faculty meetings. But at my first meeting, I gave the gavel to the dean of faculty, saying, good faculty can run their own meetings. They don't need a president to do it.
Was that Dean Chapin at the time, or was it?
Yeah, right. He was pretty surprised and delighted, I think, and the faculty were too. We have a lot of smart faculty here. And so that's the good part of that. It's not always easy to get them all on the same wavelength. And a lot of them who are very smart about some things have not had to sort of overlay that with a budget and be practical about some things too. So trying to take all that into account, trying to listen wisely, and at whatever length one needs to get understanding, but not at such length that you don't get anything done, is basically the challenge. I've been here now quite a while. I think it's about 3 times the normal tenure of a college president.
Right.
And so I know a lot of people, and I know them better than I used to, and they know me better. Sometimes that makes things easier. But I've enjoyed it. I mean, I think that in some ways it's too simple just to make up your own mind about issues, complicated issues, because you never know enough. So it's good to have smart people out there saying, have you thought about this, and can you try this, and what about that? Sometimes, obviously, that can get to be a little tiring when you get the same questions about the same issue over years and years and years, but, it's your job not to be tired. It's your job to try to answer everything freshly. That's a challenge with students, too, when, freshman students come in and want to know why you're such an idiot that you've done this, when you really been trying not to be an idiot for a decade
Right.
on the same issue.
Right.
So you just have to.
And the quick turnaround with students too probably makes it a little difficult.
Well, it's part of the job. You need to. It's okay.
So, what's next for you, and what will you miss about Eckerd? Because I'm beginning to think about those things as well as I'm getting ready to leave and graduate. What would you miss if and when you leave?
Oh, everything. You know, it's it has a unique feel and character and ethos in the campus, most of which is good. And I think the good part will continue to grow and deepen. And the part that's careless and thoughtless and really doesn't care about tradition or history will disappear. I think we have much more appreciation of the sacredness of the grounds of a campus now than we had 10 years ago. Partly because we were able to keep it up a little better. Well, I think maybe we do a better job, or maybe the students just come better prepared to try to appreciate it and take care of it.